Hello everybody and welcome to English Grammar with Ameya sir, and today I'm going to tell you a story because we are going to deal with the unit 4.2, the storyteller, and this is to be done in a very different way in the sense that this is a story. We'll deal with it like a rapid reader. I won't bother you with the language study and the grammar questions in between because that will kind of break the flow. This is a story to be enjoyed, and this is a contemporary story. I like to share with you that the first time when I taught this in the classroom, I was surprised to find out how many kids actually like the story. Because this is not that usual story, there's a king and queen and all goody goody stuff. It's quite practical there. And the kids of today love that. So let me know your impressions at the end of the story. We will deal with this one like a rapid reader. This story is by Saki. His real name is H. Munro. Let me introduce you quickly to what the scene is and who the characters here are. The story is played out in a railway compartment, and the travelers are the kids. There is a small girl, there is a smaller girl, then there is Cyril, and these kids are traveling with their aunt. And then, of course, you have the bachelor, who is the storyteller in this particular lesson, and he is actually the one who tells them, narrates them the story. And I told you that it's a very contemporary story. The story is based in UK. This incident happened near Temple Cove. So without further ado, you don't need the notepad today. Just pay 100% undivided attention and enjoy the story. There are some notes made as a footer for the meanings, vocabulary, but I won't bother you unless something is very important. Let's just flow, okay, with the story. And of course, in the comments, you can let me know if you like the story. Let's get started with the storyteller. It was a hot afternoon and the railway carriage was correspondingly sultry, and the next stop was at Temple Cove, nearly an hour ahead. The occupants of the carriage were a small girl and a smaller girl and a small boy. Their aunt occupied one corner seat, and the further corner seat on the opposite side was occupied by a bachelor who was a stranger to their party. But the small girls and the small boy emphatically occupied the compartment. Both the aunt and the children were conversational in a limited, persistent way, reminding one of the attentions of a housefly that refuses to be discouraged. Most of the aunt's remarks seemed to begin with don't, and nearly all of the children's remarks began with why. The bachelor said nothing out loud. Don't, Cyril, don't, exclaimed the aunt, as the small boy began smacking the cushions of the seat, producing a cloud of dust at each blow. Come and look out of the window, she added. The child moved reluctantly to the window. Why are those sheep being driven out of that field? He asked. I expect they are being driven to another field where there is more grass, said the aunt weakly. But there is lots of grass in that field, protested the boy. There is nothing else but grass there. Aunt, there is lots of grass in that field. Perhaps the grass in the other field is better, suggested the aunt fatuously. Why is it better? Came the swift, inevitable question. Oh, look at those cows, exclaimed the aunt. Nearly every field along the line had contained cows or bullocks, but she spoke as though she were drawing attention to a rarity. Why is the grass in the other field better? Cyril persisted. The frown on the bachelor's face was deepening to a scowl. He was a hard, unsympathetic man, the aunt decided in her mind. She was utterly unable to come to any satisfactory decision about the grass in the other field. A smaller girl created a diversion by beginning to recite on a road to Mandalay. She only knew the first line, but she put her limited knowledge to the fullest possible use. She repeated the line over and over again in a dreamy but resolute and very audible voice. It seemed to the bachelor as though someone had had a bet with her that she could not repeat the line aloud 2,000 times without stopping. Whoever it was who had made the wager was likely to lose the bet. Come over here and listen to a story, said the aunt, when the bachelor had looked twice at her. The children moved listlessly towards the aunt's end of the carriage. Evidently, her reputation as a storyteller did not rank high in their estimation. In a low, confidential voice, interrupted at frequent intervals by loud, petulant questionings from her listeners, she began an unenterprising and deplorably uninteresting story about a little girl who was good and made friends with everyone on account of her goodness and was finally saved from a mad bull by a number of rescuers who admired her moral character. The girl asked. Wouldn't they have saved her if she hadn't been good? Well, yes, but I don't think they would have run quite so fast to her help if they had not liked her so much. It is the stupidest story I've ever heard. I didn't listen after the first bit, it was so stupid. The smaller girl made no actual comment on the story, but she had long ago recommenced a murmured repetition of her favorite line. You don't seem to be a success as a storyteller. The aunt bristled in instant defense at this unexpected attack. It is a very difficult thing to tell stories that kids both understand and appreciate. I don't agree with you. Perhaps you would like to tell them a story. Tell us a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Bertha who was extraordinarily good. The children's momentarily aroused interest began at once to flicker. All stories seemed dreadfully alike, no matter who told them. She did all that was told. She was always truthful. She kept her clothes clean. She ate milk puddings as though they were jam tarts, learned her lessons perfectly, and was polite in her manners. Was she pretty? Not as pretty as any of you, but she was horribly good. There was a wave of reaction in favor of the story. The word horrible in connection with goodness was a novelty that commended itself. It seemed to introduce a ring of truth that was absent from the aunt's tales of infant life. She was so good that she won several medals for goodness, which she always wore pinned on to her dress. There was a medal for obedience, another medal for punctuality, and a third for good behavior. They were large metal medals and they clicked against one another as she walked. No other child in the town where she lived had as many as 3 medals, so everybody knew that she must be extra good child. Horribly good, everybody talked about her goodness, and the prince of the country got to hear about it. And he said that as she was so very good, she might be allowed once a week to walk in his park, which was just outside the town. It was a beautiful park, and no children were ever allowed in it. So it was a great honor for Bertha to be allowed to go there. Were there any sheep in the park? No, there were no sheep, but there were other small, harmless animals in the park. Bertha was rather sorry to find out that there were no flowers in the park. She had promised her aunts with tears in her eyes that she would not pick any of the kind prince's flowers, and she had meant to keep her promise. So, of course, it made her feel silly to find out that there were no flowers to pick. Why weren't there any flowers? Because the animals had eaten them all. The gardeners had told the prince that you couldn't have animals and flowers, so he decided to have animals and no flowers. There was a murmur of disapproval at the excellence of Prince's decision. So many people would have decided the other way. There were lots of other delightful things in the park. There were ponds with gold and blue and green fish in them, and trees with beautiful parrots that said clever things at a moment's notice, and hummingbirds that hummed all the popular tunes of the day. If I were not so extraordinarily good, I should not have been allowed to come into this beautiful park and enjoy all that there is to be seen in it. Her medals clinked against one another as she walked and helped to remind her how good, very good, she really was. Just then, An enormous wolf came prowling into the park to see if it could catch a fat little animal for its supper. The first thing that it saw in the park was Bertha. Her her pinafore was so spotlessly white and clean that it could be seen from a great distance. Bertha saw the wolf and saw that it was stealing towards her, and she began to wish that she had never been allowed to come into the park. She ran as hard as she could, and the wolf came after her with huge leaps and bounds. She managed to reach a shrubbery of myrtle bushes, and she hid herself in one of the thickest of the bushes. The wolf came sniffling among the branches, its black tongue lolling out of its mouth, and its pale grey eyes glaring with rage. Bertha was terribly frightened and thought to herself, if I had not been so extraordinarily good, I should have been safe in the town at this moment. However, the scent of the myrtle was so strong that the wolf could not sniff out where Bertha was hiding, and the bushes were so thick that he might have hunted about in them for a long time without catching sight of her. And so he thought he might as well go off and catch a little animal instead. Bertha was trembling very much at having the wolf prowling and sniffling so near her, and as she trembled, the medal for obedience clinked against the medals for good conduct and punctuality. The wolf was just moving away when he heard the sound of the medals clinking and stopped to listen. They clinked again in a bush quite near him. He dashed into the bush, his pale grey eyes gleaming with ferocity and triumph, and dragged Bertha out and devoured her to the last morsel. All that was left of her were shoes, bits of clothing, and the 3 medals for goodness. The story began badly, but it had a beautiful ending. It is the most beautiful story that I ever heard. It is the only beautiful story I have ever heard. A most improper story to tell young children. You have undermined the effects of years of careful teaching. At any rate, I kept them quiet for 10 minutes, which was more than what you were able to do. The bachelor walked down the platform of Templecombe Station. Unhappy woman. For the next 6 months or so, those children will assail her in public with demands for an improper story. So guys, what is your impression about it? As I said, there is no goody-goody stuff here. Quite a contemporary story. And the children loved the end. Normally you would see, well, at least when I was a kid back then, we would have loved if had Bertha lived long. But the kids here, they love it. The wolf was pretty smart, got hold of Bertha and devoured her whole. By the way, this was a new effort of dealing with this unit because it was a story. We dealt with it more like a rapid reader than anything else. I hope you enjoyed that. There were some notes made and there are additional grammar questions which we shall deal with later. But please leave comments and tell me how you thought the story was, or would you have liked some other end to it. We'll meet again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.